Last time out, we left the Stones as they prepared to take on a Huddersfield team that are top of League One in the first round of the FA Cup. The game started with Bojan Radulovic missing an early penalty. He made amends halfway through the first half as he raced through and slotted home from the edge of the box. Huddersfield couldn't celebrate for too long though, as winger Obiero smashed in from outside the area. But they were back in front 2 minutes later after a ball over the top found Bergzorg and he slotted home. It took until the 68th minute, but Wealdstone got themselves back in the game thanks to top scorer Nathan Ferguson. And that's the way it stayed, and Wealdstone had secured a famous draw and a replay at home. But looking at the match stats, they probably deserved more. The lure being a home tie against fellow National League side Yeovil in the next round if they could get through. The Huddersfield game did give a nice cash boost to the Stones, who now have quite a healthy bank balance. And well-travelled midfielder Alex Dyer departs the club and signs for Eastleigh after a lack of game time. Next up at the Vale was a game against Barnet in a game which is the closest thing to a local derby, and the Stones were on fire again with a 3-0 rout, the highlight being another goal for Nathan Ferguson. Ferguson was on the score sheet for the third game in a row against Dagenham and Redbridge, but it was only an equaliser in a 1-1 draw. There were no goals to show you in the next game as a 0-0 draw at home to Eastleigh, who decided not to play Alex Dyer against his old club, and that was 3 draws in 4 games now. And that was no thanks to striker Sean Adarkwa, who hasn't managed to find the net in a whopping 10 hours of football. Not the news they wanted as they headed into the Huddersfield replay, which got off to a terrible start as Radulovic headed home from a corner. The next goal came from another corner, but this time it was an error as Dewhurst dropped the ball at the feet of Pearson, who stabbed home. They didn't dwell for too long though, and Luke Dreher fired home to give them a chance of a historic comeback. And it was Dreher who was in the right place again just after half time as he latched onto Seaman's cross to fire Wealdstone level. But it was 0-0 for Dreher though, as he lost possession, which resulted in Huddersfield going 3-2 up. But he was saved by his midfield partner Sam Boehm, who rose from a corner to equalise and send this game into extra time. And in extra time, Wealdstone were awarded a penalty which Aaron Henry stepped up and fired Wealdstone into the second round of the FA Cup in a giant killing for the ages, and netting them a £41,000 windfall in the process. The draw for the FA Trophy was slightly kinder, pitting Wealdstone at home to Dorking. But the efforts against Huddersfield had taken its toll on Pochettino and his men, and he faced a headache with several key players now in need of a rest. Thankfully, next up was 22nd place Tamworth, while second and third were against each other as Oldham hosted Woking. Wealdstone managed to overcome a late fight back and super sub Alarakia fired home to secure a 3-2 win. And with Oldham beating Woking, it gave Pochettino's men a 6-point lead at the top after 19 games. And also made it 10 games unbeaten for the Stones as they go rolling on. 10 became 11 as another 3-2 win followed, this time against Gateshead away. And there were still no goals for Adarkwa, so Wealdstone turned to the loan market and brought in Ken Abbo from Norwich for the remainder of the season. And what an impact he made as he netted a debut hat-trick against Yeovil, which was sealed by this breakaway goal in a 6-0 hammering, which would send Wealdstone into the third round of the FA Cup with a draw potentially against some of the biggest Premier League teams and a massive away day. Or not, as they get drawn away at Championship side Oxford. At least there was an excellent youth intake on the horizon to look forward to. But next up it was the FA Trophy and a home tie against Dorking, where close to 2,000 people packed themselves into the Vale to see the Stones batter Dorking in a game where you'll have to tell me how they only won 2-0. Maybe all the games were catching up with Wealdstone though, as they lose 3-1 at home to Boston in the league, in a game where they probably should have still won comfortably, but it just wasn't to be. As we approach the halfway mark in the season, it's a 5-point gap at the top for Wealdstone, and Nathan Ferguson is joint top scorer in the league, with Charlie Seaman leading the assist charts. A rotated team then went away to Aldershot and came away with a 2-1 win. Next up was Rochdale at home for Pochettino's men, but they weren't at their best on this occasion and conceded a late equaliser to draw 1-1. They bounced back in some style though as they went to Solihull Moors and came away with 3 points after a 3-1 win. Hartlepool were the first team to have played the Stones twice in the league, and just like the opening day of the season, they went down to a superior Wealdstone side, who arguably had bigger fish to fry as they prepared to take on Oxford United in the third round of the FA Cup. Oxford were given an early penalty, which was comfortably dispatched by Franco Bigo. But building up from the back allowed Wealdstone to cut through and Micah Obiero was on hand to equalise. As half-time approached, poacher Ken Abbo was in the right place at the right time as he headed in Charlie Seaman's shot and sent the Wealdstone fans into delirium. But hearts were broken as Sam Long smashed home from the edge of the area in the 93rd minute to save Oxford's blushes and crush Wealdstone's dreams and send this one to a replay. Can Pochettino pick up his troops and bounce back? Tune in next week to find out.